My name is Wolf, and today we are back with our life beginning and always with Derek's epilogue. It's kind of nice to know why this is happening so late. I thought it was going to be in the morning. Sorry. She said, not even sounding a tiny bit. She said, not sounding sorry even a tiny bit. My big brother didn't visited, and he's far more important than you. Oh. There wasn't much Nico could say against the retort, though he still couldn't stop himself from looking sour. He learned how it felt to be on the receiving side of such attitude, and didn't appreciate the taste of humble pie. Both Derek and Clary guiltily chuckled on the sideline at such display of karma. Hey! The voice coming through Nicholas's phone remained unapologetic, but a spark of genuine interest in the present returned to the self-described future seer. Is that what you wanted to talk about? You got a big brother too? Miss Carla didn't practice the concept of privacy. That was the second harsh lesson Nicholas got in a matter of minutes. He slapped a hand against one eye and hurried to end the call before any further education on life's displeasure could be taught. It's cool, forget it. I hope you have a very good day. Tell Jaden I said hi. He doesn't know who you are.
See you.
Goodbye forever. From his face to the phone, Nicholas smacked his fingers against the screen to end the psychic connection. With a deep sigh, Nicholas's whole torso slumped over. He went low enough with his hands almost scraped the floor. That encounter deflated him. What was that about? Clary posed the question out of simple curiosity. He didn't give a hint of judgment or suspicion, but Nicholas reacted as if Clary asked where the last cookie went to his crown and covered little brother. Nothing. It was about nothing. The total shutdown took Clary by surprise. He frowned. The biggest brother of the bunch took that as a sign to step forward with a soft smile, and some almost parental words. Well, Nico can have his fun. We've all wondered what might happen in the future. Clary's usual placidity returned after a shrug. He could accept that Nicholas didn't appreciate any attempts at prying and focused on his chatting with Derek about his own matters.
No.
I haven't. I'm not sure I want to know. Realizing everything about me and everyone else was entirely set to the point where each move could be protected would make the world feel almost pointless. Even if it was a good future. Well, if it was a bad one, that would be even worse. I'm convinced. I definitely don't want to hear about my future. Clary nodded to himself meaningly. He had reasoned it all out, and that chapter of conversation could be closed. Until a low murmur came from the still-drifting figure of Nicholas that left an ugly wrinkle across the page. Easy for you to say. He hadn't been trying to join the conversation, yet he made it crystal clear that it wasn't a topic up for discussion. Yet Nicholas was agitated enough about whatever it was to voice the contempt. What's that supposed to mean, Nicholas? Her suspicion was no longer the description that applied to Clary's words. They were drifting in it. Clary's attention now on him, Nicholas coolly peered over at his brother between the long, thick strands of hair that dangled in front of his eyes. He didn't speak. Derek's characteristic grin strained under the rising tension he had attempted to sidestep. He clapped his hands together and made another go at shifting the focuses.
That's a bummer.
Nicholas is really getting older. He starts a lot more nowadays, huh? The weight of the world is starting to get to him. That sucks, but there's no avoiding it as you grow up. Derek succeeded again. Clara's icy stare pointed his way instead, but it didn't last. Clara watched him intently, only long enough to read what he could from his older brother's acts and deeds. Then he came to some kind of conclusion. At that point, the middle sparrows turned to Nicholas again. He didn't look at him. It was through him. Some things don't change even when you're older. Harry didn't grit his teeth or shout. There was a lack of feeling. Disconnectedness that was worse than anger would have been. Nicholas's fingers tightened into a fist. He sprung right up. He stared into his brother's face defiantly. He shook with an impotent rage. Harry laughed. Harry had been looking down on him, and easily still could have, even at Nicholas's full height. That added an extra swing thing to what the younger Suarez said next. You know what sucks more than growing up? Being the last to grow up. I'm the one who gets left behind. I'm basically an only child now. It's just me, Mom, Dad at home. The flash of fury burned out quick. Nicholas began to tremble with every cracking sentence.
It's not fair.
And the worst of it is, I'm probably just being annoying, right? The spoiled baby of the family, always crying for attention. Of course adults have to go out and do their adult things. It's stupid to think it's dumb to think people could do anything else. So I can't talk about it with anyone. Nicholas plight devastated Derek, who was ready to move heaven and earth to solve the conundrum of aging if he could. But Claria's features didn't as much twitch. Do you really not tell anyone? There was a callous that left Derek speechless. He couldn't stop the days from going by, and he couldn't even stop his younger brothers from being mad at each other. Nicholas and Clary Suarez glared at each other unflinchingly. What's that supposed to mean, Clary? You told Derek, didn't you? He knew how you'd felt, and I bet he knows what the call was about. What else could I have been talking about by the pool? You can always talk to Derek, only him. Derek said all that. My God. Clary said all of that. He was accusing Nicholas of loving Derek more than him, and Clary hated that. Well, am I right? The staring contest ended right there. Nicholas hung his head down, dropping his glance to the floor. That was the only battle the war wasn't over yet. You're so smart and somehow not smart at all. Unaffected by the insult, but distinctly frustrated from the lack of real answer. Clary looked again. Clary once again looked at Derek. Derek's mouth continued to hang open in horror, but he finally closed it. He too turned his gaze away from the middle child. He didn't have any words to offer that time. Clary stood there between his two silent brothers, futilely turning from one to the other. They were crowded together in the same space, but seemed so far away. Ultimately, it was a lack of response that Clary took as an answer. All alone, right next to the ones he cared about the most. Clary whispered barely.
Fine.
I knew it. The suffocating stillness exploded. Nicholas wasn't finished. You don't know shit. I know there's no need having the three of us around. Derek is more than enough for everyone. Shots were fired back and forth, with no ground gained on either side. I was literally 6 when I obsessed over Derek. You can get over it already. I'll get over it as soon as you do. Nicholas thrusted his arms out wide, caught up in the heat of the feud. The need to take Clary down. He sacrificed the secret he had held on so tightly. Well, guess what, Clary? I did tell Derek about the call. That means he can tell you all about it. That means he can tell you all about how I never mentioned him, the stupid psychic. I have 2 older brothers, not just him. I haven't forgotten even if you're so sure I have. When I asked for the reading, Derek was already long gone. I wasn't gonna demand the universe to bring him back. He had better things to do. Hey, that's not... Derek instinctively spoke out against the idea that his family was such a low priority, and managed to hold his tongue. This was between Nicholas and Clary. Neither of them could see Derek amid their mutual misdirected heart. I wanted to ask how much longer I'd at least have you nearby. Maybe you'd go away from after college, or maybe you'd stay here. I didn't know. But you might have felt bad if I asked you directly in case you were gonna leave. I didn't want to hold you back from whatever life you had in mind, with or without me around. And that's the only reason it was easier to admit to Derek. So that. Nico's arms were folded defiantly, as he mimicked the sniding closing remark of the psychic used to tell Liz off. However, nothing came about him. However, nothing came about him came. However, nothing came. Hang on. However, nothing about him came across truly satisfied. He had to twist his face away from now trying. He had to twist his face away from to try hiding how glossy his eyes were. Nicholas couldn't avoid the throat-clenching emotion in his voice. Clara was completely floored. Shock and sorrow and relief fought for control over his face. It contorted with deep creases. He understood then why Derek had kept quiet about what was happening. It wasn't his place to admit something like that on Nico's behalf. After a pain-stretched silence, the feeling settled into Clara's heart was an Olympic size full of regret.
I'm sorry.
Nicholas, I'm so sorry. It was a struggle for Clara to speak. He swallowed thickly, his Adam's apple bubbling. He didn't try to cover how watery his eyes became. You were right about me, and I was wrong about you. I hadn't gone over the memory of being the odd man out, even though it was years ago. It's not fair. None of it has been. Harry looked out at the sky again, lost in its great expanse, as his mind sank deep into the past. You and Derek have to have moments that are only for the two of you. We're not set. We're individual people, and we have our own relationships. Though, to me, it always felt as if there's more moments of Nicholas and Derek than any other. When I was a kid, I thought I could never win. When I was a kid, I never thought I could win. You were clear about whose company you were looking for. I didn't want to make things awkward by being the third wheel. And, mostly, I didn't want to test the water to see how much I was walking between you and Derek. I was too afraid that I wouldn't be. It was better to tell myself I didn't need to be part of it. His eyes and hands squeezed shut. Harry was unable to face his brother directly. He still forced himself to continue. But as much as I counted myself out, I wanted to be included. I wanted you to say Clary was back when I showed up, or that you wouldn't go somewhere if I wasn't coming too. And I wished I admitted that a long time ago. The stiffness over Clary's whole form released after he said his truth. His fist was unclenched. His shining earth-green eyes could be seen again. He'd let go for real. Well, Clary was a pillar of peace. His brother was the opposite. Nicholas vigorously scrubbed at his face, transferring tears and snot onto his bare arms rather than his face. When he could at least pretend he'd pulled himself together, Nicholas spoke again with absolute conviction. I'm sorry I ever treated you like that. Back then, and still, now all I think about is how I feel and stuff. Obviously, it was easy for me to move on, as if it was nothing. Because was one way of Obviously, it was easy for me to move on, as if it was nothing. Because I was the one getting my way. I stopped wanting it to be that way. That was my closure. But now you're the ones having a good time while I'm watching on the sidelines. There's barely a place for me anymore. I really know how it feels instead of maybe getting empathy. I still thought about me and needing everyone else to care. I'm sorry, Clara. I guess I got what was coming with this. That conclusion brought a disagreeable frown to Clara's face. He looked over the youngest through narrowed, serious gaze, but the firmness was found But the firmness was found on affection. It was unmistakable then. Harry wasn't simply a middle child. He was an older brother, all along in his own way. Even when Nicholas couldn't see it, he always had been.
No.
Nicholas? No, you didn't. You were in elementary school, remember? Why should you be punished for that? Besides, you're not giving yourself enough credit. Me and Derek did what we wanted to do with your sport. I'd say the only point you let your feelings go ahead of ours was when you heard about Derek's and Callie's potential engagement. Briefly, Nicholas's focus was pulled away from Clary. He couldn't stop himself from glancing guiltily in the direction. At that, a knowing smile ghosted over Clary's cheeks. He'd been aware of what happened as both of He'd been aware of what happened as both you and Derek, and Nico himself. There was little Clary messed with his quiet, attentive ways. Proper stoicism returned before he continued. But even then, it was pretty minor. Going to college, moving out, growing up at different times, it brings separation. But abandoning you isn't what you deserve. And even if you did, I wouldn't be glad it was happening anyway. I don't care about fairness, I'm biased. Harry's brows stayed pinched. But he lost the air of a teacher spoiling them as a guided student. The warmth of his affection was too apparent. Above all else, my family should get as much good as they can, even if it means they're spoiled sometimes. They should be spoiled.
Don't worry.
And that sentiment goes double for my little brother. Derek might have had two, but don't forget, Nico, you're the only one I've got in the whole world. Nicholas's tears went unwiped. They were free to roll down his face while he shouted as loud as his lungs could manage. I love you, Harry. When you decided to pick a college nearby, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was great when we worked on those big puzzles together and played the weirdest games we could find.
Thank you.
I never want to lose that. Even though I know you can't hang around here for the rest of your life, I want you to keep coming back. I'm grateful for every time you come through the door. Harry's lips trembled. His blinking was rapid. For someone as reserved as him, it was a display of emotion no less than Nico's heartfelt declaration. I don't want to lose you either. I love you. Feverishly, Clary lifted his arms from his side. It was subtle. It was small, subtle gesture. He didn't even bring them all the way up, but he took the initiative to reach out. Nicholas didn't need more of a sign than that. He bounded ahead and jumped in his big brother's chest. Clary's long-held fears of rejection were shattered for good. It took a second to get over the emotional and physical stun of Nicholas's hold, but soon, Clary reciprocated. The two embraced another fully with nothing left standing in between. They were left in peace to have that. But once it was over, and the two men began to part, the piece missing from their brotherly bonding took a step forward. I'm sorry too. The unexpected statement got immediate laughter from the recipients. Harry and Nicholas threw their heads back and stayed unified with an arm around each other's shoulders. What did you even do? For those two, nothing was more of a joke than Derek, Mr. Responsibility. The perfect guest Suarez needed to apologize. Derek scratched the back of his head, accepting his turn as the third wheel. He might be awkward over Burnham, but Derek absolutely meant what he said. I did way too much of the wrong things, and not nearly enough of the right things. I'm the one who insisted on handling Nico all the time, because I didn't want to ask for help, because I saw myself as only the big brother of the family. My overinflated sense of importance and martyrdom is what took away any space for Clary. But that was only when I thought there was something I needed to handle. If everything was fine, I wasn't there at all. I was too busy with school and practice trying to prove myself. Neither of you are to blame for how everything went down. You had to be demanding to get my attention, or you stayed out of my way.
I really messed up.
I should have been there, not more, but better, and let you have each other too. Please take notice, apologize. The eldest attempt to accept responsibility was met with an almost fatherly chastening from both of his younger siblings. Clary was able to glance down at what Derek Clary was able to glance down at Derek the way he could with his one little brother, while Nicholas shook the back of his head with a world-weary sigh. That's not true at all.
No.
Yeah, no way, Derek. I took demanding attention to a whole nother planet. Sure, as a little kid. But that doesn't mean I was cool and easy to live with. Sorry for holding you back, or I didn't actually stop you from going up, which is good. I'm sorry for raining on your parade when you did go out for what you wanted. Dad was totally ungrateful after how much you'd given up for me already. You did the best you could, better than I would have if I had been the responsible one. Can you imagine what a disaster that would have been? We wouldn't have survived this long. That imagination brought Giggles back. It lifted a sad smile onto Clarice's face. Another commented south had seen his younger brother happy. He spoke sincerely to his older one.
It's okay.
I need to say sorry as well. You didn't try to push me aside. You didn't have a chance to. What I saw between you and Nico, how close you were. You had something I wasn't a part of. But I decided entirely on my own to wait around for both of you to come to me, while never attempting to be there for either of you. I should have made an effort for my family. You weren't there for me! Harry in his calm presence was one of a kind in his family. He was so used to those around him being far louder. However, Derek and Nicholas's insistent yells still called the middle son off guard. It was full of rejection of his honest admission. But as much as Harry believed about himself, the refuting of it wasn't a surprise to anyone else. Each brother viewed their own faults as the source of all problems, while the others could barely see those shortcomings past the love they had for their family member. From end to end, the semicircle of Suarez's smiles began to spread. Alright, we're all sorry and none of us needs to be. How's that?
Yeah.
It's great. It's great! The two spoke the same words, one after the other, still linked together. And Derek watched them, swelling with pride that he got to call them his family, his brothers and his friends. Perfect, but let's refrain from what I was saying. Derek had a grin bright with confidence. He never looked more like a brother he had hoped to be when he started up to his siblings. He clapped a hand to each of their backs, making a proper huddle amongst the trio, and stared at them head on.
I got you.
Nico, if you ever decided you need your older brother anymore and never want to see me, it'll break my heart. Please don't stop letting me be there as much as I can. Nicholas sniffled once more before nodding determined. Clary, you'll always be my co-pilot. I know you've been backing me up since we were kids, and you're welcome with me anywhere, anytime. Your presence is always my pleasure. A dark red flushed over Clary's face. He was too embarrassed to react to the steadiness. Instead, he offered a shaky thumbs up in the center of the loop. It was true that Clary was Nicholas's reliable big brother, and he might have been the tallest of the bunch, but in front of Derek, you could never miss he was also a little sibling. Laying out a bark of laughter, Derek gave the boys another smack across their shoulder bones, for good measure. Oof!
I promise.
And I promise I'll always find a way to see you sooner or later. And when I can't be in person, I'll call. We're never gonna lose touch. I love you, bros. Tightening his grip on their shoulder, Derek physically signified his vow to never let his brothers go. Nicholas responded by letting his head rest on Derek's solid arm.
Thanks.
Thanks, Derek. I can go too. Love you. Same for what he said. I'll cool, and I love you. He followed after Nicholas in more words. Clary placed his cheek against the well-trimmed side of Derek's head. This time with the full trio, Tara's brothers snuggled in a loving embrace. Hugh looked on in relief. The tension that had the subsequent comfort had easily oh my god. He looked on in relief. The tension that had the subsequent comfort had been easily felt without participating. You had been entirely frozen, attention fixed on the three brothers, until a nudge to your arm brought your focus back to your own situation. Was smirking at you. At some point, you both stood. You can't remember exactly when you got to your feet. In the spirit of sibling afternoon, let me say I appreciate you being. In the spirit of sibling affection, let me say that I appreciate being here with you, Callie. Because it would be even more awkward if I was stuck watching this scene by myself. Shh! Don't interrupt them! Jeez, I should have known you'd be protected at moments like these. Unfortunately, your skull couldn't put the words back in her mouth. A sound entirely different from the dainty tone of your sister's words came from the side. The sister and you glanced over to the intimate scene of brotherly love, only to find the group of them staring back at you. The three men expressed a gradient of embarrassment, Nico being the least fussed and Clary being the most. Derek was in the middle of the scale too, amused and uplifted to feel ashamed. But each came to the exact same conclusion about it. One more apology was needed after all. Sorry! I totally forgot you two were there. Oops. Sorry again. It's my fault. I pushed Nico to talk at a bad time, and we shouldn't have had that out in front of you. I would say not. She leaned forward, and the floral bracelet she wore jangled on her wrist. From the dramatic way she placed her hands against her hips. You know, I was very upset when you spoke about Derek being enough for everyone. I could hardly stay out of it. No offense, but Clary is my favorite of the Suarez trio. Liz wasn't known for a subtle touch. She was on the nose with all her thoughts and opinions. That kind of directness could only lead to one thing. Clary blushing again. Liz, you don't have a large hand squared on Suarez's head, stopping him into stopping. It was Dark's. He winked down liberally. Hey, she's allowed to speak her mind after we did. It's a solid choice. Agreed. That's a sensible lady with good taste. Clary smiled shyly.
Thanks.
Both of my brothers are my favorite. Me too.
Right.
Same. Responses flowed into one another in perfect order, like dominoes lined up exactly so. Nicholas is my favorite. For real? Wow! Don't sound so surprised. It's generally impossible not to adore you.
I swear.
Seriously, sometimes I think you're too powerful. Glancing between the faces of each, noting the individuality, the familiarity in the features, his thought again to spend the trip with those brothers was something you'd always be thankful for. When Derek's laughter filled the air, it rang differently than before, playing a new song. Man, if I were younger, this would have been the point where I jumped into that pool. Pools be damned. Luckily, I'm enough of an adult to remember I've got an expensive phone in my pocket, not to mention my wallet.